Does a speech have to have an audience? Well, I mean, it depends on a lot of things. My name is Jason Hewlett. I'm a keynote speaker. I'm an award-winning Las Vegas entertainer. And when you think about an audience and you think about whether a speech has to have an audience or not, I used to think, yes, a speech absolutely has to have an audience, but my opinions, I think, have changed a bit through the years. And so I hope that you enjoy this video. So this topic is important to me because I hope that it gives you courage to consider for yourself the reason that you're doing the speech in the first place. And so like I said at the beginning, my philosophy used to be, yes, every speech or show should be created for an audience. But the more I've gone along my career, the more I'm not so sure about that. And not to say I don't like getting paid, because audiences pay for you to speak. But I think you need to create that which matters to you first, and that's what's most important. Then I think the audience will appear. This is just the philosophy of Jason. But I've heard this somewhat supported in recent comments from other speakers, influencers, and so forth. For example, a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk. He goes by Gary V. He's one of the great speakers out there. He talks about how so many influencers now have been following his model, which if you follow Gary V, I think he does 15 to 20 pieces of content per platform per day. It's an insane model. It's amazing. But he said so many influencers are burning out now and fast because they're creating for the likes. They're creating for comments and for followers. I agree 100% with Gary V when he says, don't create for the likes and the followers. Create something that's important to you first. And so that's what this video really jumps into. Because does a speech have to have an audience? In a lot of ways, yeah, you want them there. But in other ways, sometimes you just need to create something for you and then the audience will appear. So let's talk about it. So the challenge of not having an audience is that, first of all, those people aren't going to show up, right? And so not having an audience is rough. As a speaker, I've been hired before where I showed up and they had 300 seats set up for an event that people were supposed to pay for. It was right on the heels of the pandemic and where people were still not sure about coming back to live events. 300 seats. Guess how many showed up? 7. 7 people, 300 seats. That's tough. That's tough on the ego, but that's tough for the event planner mostly. It was embarrassing for me, but I still did my best. But if you don't have an audience, you're still going to give your speech if you care just enough about what you're going to say. And I spoke really well to those 7 people. Now, number 2 is, hey, you might look like an idiot if nobody shows up. I mean, you can really feel bad about yourself if, nobody comes. And so you want to have something that's significant to say, but also promoted well in order for people to show up. And the other challenge of having no audience is that, yeah, when people don't show up, what good is it to speak? But if there's at least one person there, it really comes down to your courage, your willingness to share that which you really believe they need to hear. A lot of it needs to come from a place of you feeling like you need to speak and say something into existence. Now, there's a fine line between all of this, so you're most likely not going to get paid, and that's a hard thing when you realize that nobody wants to pay you to listen to you. That's a pretty brutal place to be in. And so what is the real purpose behind why you would speak? And so when you think about the philosophy of, hey, does an audience have to have, or does a speaker have to have an audience? Well, it depends on whether you want to create something that they're willing to pay for, that they're willing to listen to, and it also matters as to what you're willing to share with them. And finally, it kills your ego. When you create something that you feel is so great, and let's say you've created it, however, for the audience. If they don't show up, that really makes you feel bad. It's okay. You just have to continue as best as you possibly can. But the problem is that so many times we've created something important for our audience and we're giving everything, we've worked so hard, and they're not giving us any feedback, they're not giving anything back. That's hard for our ego. That's why you have to step into this other place of saying, the audience is important, I want to give them my best, but I have to give them what I've created. And so we're gonna now flip into the philosophy and into the reason as to why you need to create these things without worrying about the audience, with making sure that it's something that is important to you. So here's my sales pitch as to why a speech doesn't have to have an audience. Because first, what you have to say is so important to you, you don't care who listens. Yeah, That's a hard one. I know that when I've given a speech where people were listening and were not really caring about it, it made me obviously feel bad. But I knew I had to give that presentation. I knew I had to say what I was saying. And when it did not matter to me whether the audience was with me or not in that moment, I knew I had to share that point or that part of the story in order for me to feel good about what I was sharing for them. One of my favorite examples of the people that does this so well is a guy named Jordan Peterson. Yes, he's Dr. Jordan Peterson. He's a professor from Toronto, Canada. And he did something really interesting. For years, he was just in the middle of teaching. He would take a break. He'd go log into Quora and he would answer questions. And if his questions were up-leveled, then he felt good about himself, right? If nobody responded, then he realized he hadn't hit really a topic that they liked. But what I like about Dr. Jordan Peterson, outside of all the fascinating things he says, and he's controversial, he's opinionated, there's a lot to him. But I love that he pressed the button. He pressed go live. Now, he didn't know if lots of people would be listening or following. He just pressed the button. Now, it was important enough to him to just start talking into the ether. And he was sitting in his computer in his home, and he just started talking. And he shared just a couple of ideas and thoughts. And this is how his career began to go viral. He was already a very successful speaker. He was already doing well in life. But he became a household name because he was willing to press the button, not sure who was watching. That's the fun thing about being a speaker online, is you don't know who could be watching. But if you have something so important to say, you should press play or record or go live. And the next thing he knows, Dr. Jordan Peterson, along with his family, have had to change their life quite a bit because now he's one of the most booked speakers in the world. He's doing world tours and arenas. This is a fascinating story because he started just by pressing play right into a camera talking and not knowing who's listening. I find that very brave. I hope you do too. I hope that you realize that, yeah, you don't necessarily have to have an audience, but the audience will appear when you say what you're supposed to say. So I want you to, if you will, put in the comments before we wrap this video up. I've got a few more points. I would love for you to type in what is holding you back, what is causing you some fear from actually moving forward with what you want to say. Is it about the audience? Is it about you? Put it in the comments if you're willing. And hey, I respond to every comment, so I'll check them out and I'll reply too. I appreciate your bravery and courage, but I appreciate you engaging with me here. Let's keep on going with these points. So number 3, speaking something into existence is essential. And I truly believe that that's a real concept for us to embrace because we have to speak truth. We have to speak authenticity. We have to speak that which comes from deep within us. A lot of people are worried about how the public will perceive it. They might even be worried that no one will show up. I've already talked about where I've done events where 300 people were supposed to be there and 7 came. Oh well, you still give those 7 a reason to celebrate and be there. But speaking it into existence, are you willing to be brave enough to put it out there? Because if it's something that you so believe in, it will actually drive you regardless of whether you get likes, comments, subscriptions. It truly will. It will drive you whether you get the gig, get paid or not. If it's something you love so much and you continue to speak it into existence, it will completely transform the way that you communicate, present yourself, the way you think, and your confidence, and the fact that you kept a promise to yourself to share something you don't know if any audience is even listening to. Those who are meant to find your work will find it. They're meant to find it. But imagine if you don't put that work out there for them to even search it out. That's a real shame. I know that I've come across artists that no one introduced me to. I just found them. I came across books that have changed my life. No one gave them to me. I just found them. But the artist had to create something. The musician had to record the song. The speaker had to say what they meant to say. And so if you're willing to do something like that, your audience will appear. This final one that I'm about to share is that a speaker creating a speech for an audience is most likely to be successful right away. But if they've created it for the audience, that will not last. Rather, if the speaker creates the speech out of something they're passionate about and that they really don't care who the audience is, that's the person who people are going to follow. Now, this happens all the time. These are people that perhaps are a little bit unpopular at first and then become a true legend or a star. I mean, It's very rare for someone to come right out of the gates and be humongous and stay at that level for so long. However, there are iconic examples. Abraham Lincoln, he is known for failing over and over again. He did not create the speech for the audience. He created the speech for himself, his own values, his own foundation beliefs. He just kept at it. Eventually he failed enough to where there was a crisscross, and he became the President of the United States, perhaps the greatest president we've ever had. That's just one example of an icon who did something fascinating. But each of us, if we're willing to not just think about how can I make a buck, how can I create a speech that they'll hire me for, the audience will love, rather, how can I create something that matters to me? And if you'll do that on every post, if you'll do that on every video, like for example, this for me, this point was so important that I wanted to create this for you. I don't know who the audience is going to be on this video, but to me it's so important that you realize that when you create for you, the audience will appear. And it's important for you to realize that if you create it for the audience, they'll be there for a minute, but you're eventually going to run out of steam. And just like Gary Vee said, if we're only commenting or creating and doing things for the likes and the subscriptions, we're going to run out of steam. We need to create for us what we're passionate about. I hope that this has given you some ideas. I hope this has given you some courage. I hope that you're willing to subscribe to this channel because we talk about really cool things, not just about your audience, but also about how you can become a greater speaker yourself and share your message and keep the promise. Thanks for joining me here.